Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to Two Toe Tags Metal Reviews, and today we're going to be reviewing the new Trivium album titled, What the Dead Men Say. So, we've listened to this album non-stop for 1 week, and I'm going to talk about a song that we didn't mention last week in our first impressions, and I noticed a bunch of people in the comments were a little upset that we didn't talk about this song, so we're going to talk about the Defiant. This song, you know, when I first heard it last week, I thought it was straight up like really good, and it's a song that totally goes back to like the ascendancy era of this band, you know, very thrashy, whatever. But it literally took a day. It took Saturday, and I'm listening to the song realizing, holy shit, this song is amazing. And one of the coolest things about this song is that it's a fusion between a circle pit song and an anthem song. When the song's going and you hear the main groove, you want to fucking run around and push people. Like this is, you can hear that song and totally see Matt just like circle pit now.
Yeah.
And then when the chorus starts, you really want to just belt it. It feels amazing to hear and so fun to sing. So it's awesome that you can kind of get that much interaction out of a single song.
Yeah.
It's super intense. It's just, oh my god, the solo is really cool, one of the best ones on the album, and just fucking love that song. So I just wanted to put that out there that song is incredible.
Yeah, it's the most metalcore song on the album. Like, you hear a lot of elements. There's a bit of black metal, there's a bit of thrash metal, there's some melodic death metal. That's the most metalcore sounding song on the album.
Yeah.
It goes back to the roots, you know, and definitely it's one of the highlights for sure.
Now, to branch upon that about this entire album, I just want to say that this album was phenomenal. After listening to it for a week, I loved it so much, and you know, the Defiant being the way it is interesting because nothing else on the album sounds like that. This album has so much going for it. Every song is something else, but it's not to a fault because, you know, some albums you can have a bunch of songs that just don't adhere to each other. This album adheres to each other, but every song is its own experience. Every song is unique and has something interesting to it. And another thing I noticed about this album is that I feel that this album has elements from every other album. Now, not to say that, you know, oh, just recycle things. No, I think that this album, if you want to find something that reminds you of another era of this band, you'll find it in this album. Like how you have ascendancy sounding stuff in the Defiant, or the, you know, a chunk of Catastrophe sounding like Silence in the Snow, or the Ones We Leave Behind sounding like The Sin in the Sentence, you know, stuff like that. I feel like you can kind of put, like, this band, you know, took everything from their 20-year existence and put it all into one package, and that's this album.
That's interesting to say, and yeah, you know what, I really enjoyed this album throughout the week too, and something that I found interesting for me personally is that I was very drawn to the vocals. And I've mentioned before on this channel and other videos where we've covered Trivium that I've felt over the years that the vocals were the weakest point of this band. I feel like that they've definitely stepped up, and Matt has definitely stepped up his voice. He's much more well refined. Even from comparing this to Sin in the Sentence, his voice is like a mile better in my opinion. Just the usage of his voice, the cadence that he uses, he's got great cadence, really good timbre. The background vocals, I don't know, both Corey and Powell will both do backgrounds. I'm not sure which one's which, if they both do it at the same time or if they're trade off. I'm not sure who's where or whatever. But I found myself very drawn to the vocals, and I was like, I gotta figure out why I'm so attracted to this, because it's normally not something that I'm really focused on too much, right? I'm more of like a guitar drum guy, right? Vocals is kind of like a third place thing for me, but not for this album. I was really drawn to it. So I decided to take a more kind of like scientific approach to it and try to figure out what was actually drawing me to it. So I mentioned cadence, I mentioned timbre. These are two things that I feel artists and musicians use to attract ears, attract listening ears, and to keep people engaged. And I think it was done very well on this album, whether deliberately or not. Some people just do it naturally when they're songwriting, and some people meticulously put things in their songs because they know it's going to sound better to somebody's ear. So I got some examples. Catastrophist is a great example of what I consider great vocal timbre. So in the second verse, there's a background vocal, and it's just a really nice harmony between Matt and, like I said, either Corey or Paolo. And it's kind of like if you don't know what timbre is pretty much like vocal, like tone color. It's kind of a weird way to describe music, but it's like tonal color. So if you were to apply a color to an instrument, like if you were to give a trumpet the color red, another brass instrument would be a shared color, and a contrast instrument would be like a violin, a string instrument would be like a blue. Blah, 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 without getting into too much detail. The way they blend their vocals is kind of like blending a red and an orange. They blend together very nicely. Whereas if you take a song like Scattering the Ashes, during the bridge, there's another harmony, but they use contrasting tonal colors. So you'll have Matt singing in maybe like a red tone, and you'll have the background vocals in more of like a purple tone, and they contrast, but they still sound good. It's a unique, it's a unique and interesting dynamic. It's kind of similar to hearing like a trumpet and a violin playing on top of each other, right? One's gonna stand out more than the other one, but the other one's gonna contrast but also complement the first one, right? So they play with stuff like this a lot throughout the album. I think that's very interesting.
And not only do they do that with, more melodic stuff, but they also do that with layering clean and harsh vocals together as well, which, you see a lot of bands do actually, and I like how they do it on this album where it blends. It's not like, okay, you can totally just hear them on top of each other. It's like they kind of morph into one sound, which is really interesting.
That's true too, and that actually brings me to my next thing I want to talk about is the cadence, because cadence has a lot to do with how they use their voices, right? The phrasing, the pace of the vocals, all that kind of stuff. And I found several examples of, just creative use of cadence throughout the album. First example I'll give you again is in Catastrophist. There's a line he says a couple times. I think it's in the pre-chorus, bought and sold before we could even breathe. When he says the word breathe, there's a slight vibrato on it. Very slight, a little bit hard to hear first. The second time he says it, it's a little more prominent, but still a little bit, it's a subtle thing, right? But it's just that extra bit of passion he puts into the vocal there that just adds some variety to it, some personality to it. Scattering the Ashes was probably one of my go-to songs on the album, surprisingly. In my opinion, best vocals on the album on that song. The way he enunciates certain words and phrases, you can just tell he's putting his heart into it. That to me is a sign of great cadence. He plays with the pacing of his words. Like there's a line he says, what's left is in my hands, will I ever understand? But he lengthens the word understand. Will I ever understand? Kind of thing, right? So just that lengthening that one syllable of that word just gives that line and that part of the song just more personality. Where anybody else would have just said understand, he went understand. You know what I mean? So I like that kind of stuff. And my last example of great cadence, and this is vocally I'm talking about because there's a musical cadence thing I want to mention as well. In the song Bending the Arc to Fear, there's a line where when he's singing the chorus and he says, bending the arc to fear. That part, the second time he does it, he immediately starts the next line, bending the arc to fear this, right? So that's really cool because it just, the pacing's there, it switches up the pacing of the song, it switches up the phrasing of the words. It's just really well done.
And it's also really cool that this album is honestly one of the more progressive albums in this band's discography, but you can still really jam out to it in terms of the rhythms.
Yeah.
Like you said there, he kind of messed with the rhythm of his vocals, but you can still easily bob your head to that song. And
Very
honestly,
easy.
lots of the riffs on this album are like that. It's really easy to kind of digest, but there's a lot of depth to it. Like if you look at a song like Sickness Unto You, there's a lot happening in that song, especially that they have a Latin groove going on near the end, which is honestly, it's kind of out of nowhere, but at the same time, it's like, okay, I'll take it. Like, it sounds great.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot going on.
What were your thoughts on Bleed Into Me after listening to it for a week? Because I really like how that song sounds. I loved the melodies of that song. It's one that I would sing along to every single time, and the bass just stands out so much, and it sounds great.
It's my least favorite song. It doesn't mean it's a bad song. A lot of people compared it to Heart From Your Hate from the last album. I went back and listened to that song, and it's miles better than Bleed Into Me. So yeah, it's not really my favorite song. I don't hate it, but I didn't love it. It was pretty much neutral for me.
All right. Well, with that being said, let's get to ratings. So what do you rate What the Dead Men Say?
Okay, well, this album's really good. There's a lot going for it. I have a lot of notes here that I didn't even talk about because we're running short on time. I don't know, this album's really, really solid. I don't think it's as strong as The Sin in the Sentence. I don't think it is. I listened to The Sin in the Sentence again. That album to me is stronger in most ways, other than the vocals, which I think took a step up. I do, however, think this album exemplifies what it means to be a great band, because everything shines. There's a place for everything and everybody in the band, and there's just creativity all over the place. It's well mixed, it's well performed. Like every time, I'm giving an album a toe tag. This one gets a toe tag. I think it's pretty obvious. I don't think anybody that reviews this album wouldn't give it one, because I think objectively it's just that strong. Yeah, I honestly could go on. I got a whole page of notes here with all this different stuff from all different songs and stuff. So yeah, that's it for me. I'm just toe tag. Yeah.
Well, if it's that obvious for Vile, I think it's even more obvious for me that I give this album a toe tag, because it's fucking insane. It's one of those albums that just gets me going every time. Like every time on loop, the album, yeah, this album is sick. Yeah, that song's sick. Yeah, this one's sick. More than half of this album went into my favorites playlist. Not gonna lie, I'm not joking. I think at least like 7 of the 10 songs.
Wow.
That's how much I loved this album. And what's awesome is that this is the very first time in the history of our channel where a band has done multiple new releases that have gotten 2 toe tags.
That's true.
The very first time that's ever happened. So congratulations to Trivium for being the first band to do that. 2 toe tags for What the Dead Men Say. Godlike, amazing album, guys. Go check it out if you haven't. It's super duper good. Anyways, guys, that's all we got for you today. Remember to like the video if you liked it. Comment, tell us in the comments below if you loved this album as much as we did. Remember to like the video if you liked it. Subscribe if you guys are new to the channel, and check out our Spotify playlist in the description below. I'm TV Fish.
And I'm Vile Self.
And we'll see you guys later. This album's amazing, and I love it.